I will call to order the Personnel Policy Curriculum Committee meeting, which is duly noticed on February 3rd, 2023, through posting and notification of the press in accordance with Wisconsin 19.84. Notice is hereby given that school board members who are not members of this committee may attend this meeting so as to constitute a quorum of the Board of Education. Any such board member in attendance will be for information gathering only and will not result in direct decision-making by the Board of Education at the committee meeting. Thank you very much. I have a safety message to share. With the weather temperatures that we had last week, we've been really actually fortunate this winter that we've not had terrible temperatures, but last week it reminded me, how cold is it too cold to make my kids walk to school? And I had a couple of those questioning moments. But I looked up some information, and this is from the National Weather Service, so I feel like it has to be legitimate information. And they have a wind chill chart, which I found really interesting and helpful, and it kind of explains the wind chill temperature index. But most importantly, I think that was helpful for me is in determining kind of the frostbite and minutes of exposure. And basically, if we are at negative 18 wind chill, that's the temperature in which our skin is likely to be having frostbite within 30 minutes. So once you go beyond that, and it kind of surprised me because I thought, gosh, negative 18 wind chill is really darn cold. Certainly it has to be warmer than that. Of course we can have frostbite, but that's kind of the guide for 30 minutes or more. And then they even have like the 10-minute window and then the 5-minute window. And the 5-minute window, you're going to see around like the negative 50 wind chill. And I really hope none of us have to deal with that this year because that would not be fun for anyone. And I also want to point out, if you've noticed the really cute signs that have been around the facilities. I know I've seen them at our elementary school. I've seen them out here with the penguin walk. And I've heard parents commenting like, oh, that's really accurate, and it is. I have a whole winter walking safety, and basically walk like a penguin is how we should all be defensive and walking this winter. Of course, having appropriate footwear is really important. Making sure that you have like a some non-slip soles. I was wearing a pair of boots the other day that were worn down, and it was like I was skating. So really, I mean, in truth, those shoes that you have are really helpful. Another thing, if you're going to be out and about, there are these things called Yaks tracks. I have some, and you can just slip them right over your boot or your shoe, and they help with gripping on. But what does it mean to walk like a penguin? Well, I'm not going to demonstrate, but I'm just going to tell you. If anyone would like to get up and practice, I won't hold you back. Walk flat-footed, take short steps or shuffle for stability. You can just kind of start to picture the penguin. Concentrate on maintaining your balance. Keep your head up and don't lean forward. Shorten your stride. Walk slowly to safely navigate an icy path. Point your feet out slightly to increase stability. Keep your arms at your sides and not in your pockets. And do the penguin shuffle. I have a friend who broke her ankle on the ice already this year. My husband almost fell the other night. My son fell on the playground. So, I mean, when it's icy, it can be really dangerous. So just be careful and think like a penguin, walk like a penguin. Thank you very much. We are moving forward. Do we have to adapt? We have to, yes, that's what we have to do next. I need a motion to adopt, and Kevin has already approved. Do I have a second? I can second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay, that is approved, our agenda. I guess we're up next for staffing update and projections. Mr. Gardner?
It's me pinching.
Not here. Okay, thank you. Mr. Holzman?
Which I can stand.
I think you're fine.
Okay.
Oh, do we? You don't.
Well, I'm just reaching in my pocket.
Okay, I'm like, wait. That's you.
All right, thank you. I will gonna just pinch hit here a little bit. Mr. Garner's not well today, so I'm gonna walk through this staffing update. So the first couple of slides you have are generated towards the district goals, and so what we're trying to do again is align our staffing with our district goals. So the first goal is focusing on improving our students' reading, and the second goal specifically talks about our students' algebra. And so as we trend towards completing our staffing, we want to make sure that we're always keeping in mind our goals and what we're trying to accomplish with that. The next slide talks a little bit about our teacher TPR, as new language for me, teacher-pupil ratio, and that is, to be sure you understand, is our certified classroom teachers, not other folks. So if I'm a special education teacher, or if I'm a reading teacher, or if I'm a school counselor, those aren't included into the TPR. TPR is the number of students that a classroom teacher has in front of him or her. So our policy talks about 1 to 25 for K3, 1 to 30 for 4-5, and 1 to 30 for 6-8, and 1 to 32 for 9-12. What we focused on this year is trying to reduce that number in 3 areas. Specifically for K2, our goal was to have a smaller than 25. You know, we're looking at 22 in our kindergartens, or 20. If you have 25 kindergartners in a classroom, it's too many. I mean, it's not from the space standpoint, but from the educational and relationship pieces. So we're working on a model that would be less than that. It's common, so that's not uncommon for our district to have 20s and 19s and 18s in kindergarten and first grade, but we just want to continue to make sure we're purposeful about that. We also are looking at 2 transitions, specifically having less than 25 kids in grades 6 and in grades 9 in our core classes. Again, those are goals, and in some cases there may be situations where we have a few more than that, but we're being purposeful and trying to put some resources in that in order to make that happen. So those are just a few additions to the TPRs. And again, when we look at the TPR policy, our goal is to provide as many positive relationships with students and teachers as we can. And we know that smaller class sizes are a piece of that, not the only, but a piece of that. So one of the things that we're working on this year is working through the balancing of our current ESSER funded positions. So district-wide, we have a number of positions that are funded by ESSER, which will go away at the end of this fiscal year. We need those positions. So for example, if we had a 3rd grade position at Harrison Elementary School that was funded by ESSER dollars to have a smaller class size, this year, next year, the 2nd grade class would be moving to 3rd grade, and if they have 59 kids, we have to make a decision on whether we're going to have 20, 20, and 19, or whether we're going to have 29 and 30. And our goal is to have 20, 20, and 19, but that's the battle we have because those positions are gone. And so we're working and looking at the overall, all 12 of the buildings to come up with that model. Again, knowing that we have some lower TPR in grades 1 and 2. One of the things that we've also done as a district with the directors is we've utilized the third Friday as our continuing count. In the past, we've used the second Friday in January as the number to move forward with our staffing. And the example that I would give you is that the difference between the second Friday last year in 2022 and the third Friday in the elementary was 122 students. We're 122 students more, which is obviously positive, but we staffed differently. So over the course of June, July, August, and sometimes September, we're looking for staff members to fill the roles as the kids grow. And it's never at one building. It's never at one grade. For whatever reason this year, it's really a growth in grade 3. We have 46 new third graders district-wide, more than we had second grade the previous year. Well, no idea why. But if you divide that by 12, right, that's only 3, 4 per grade, not a big deal. But it's not exactly like that. Maybe you got 8 at one and 4 at another and 7 at one. And if I had 48 and I was 24 and 24, and well, now with 6 more, now, oh boy, that's probably not manageable. So we're always balancing, and that's what we will continue to look at and make those adjustments. We also are looking at just trying to balance with our middle school. So grade 6 is a area that we're targeting, and again, our middle schools have houses and teams, and we're just talking about those core areas. They're going to talk to you a little bit about a schedule change, but we continue to look at a staffing number that's not different than what we've had in the past. And really the challenge for us is just making sure that we understand who's coming into our building. So we typically gain about 1.5% of our population from parochial schools or just new to Janesville in grade 6. Correspondingly, that number is almost 100, about 95 on average in grade 9. So our 8th grade class grows by about 90 to 100 kids in 9th grade because of the students who are transitioning in. So we make accommodations for that. We have now a 5-year history. We know how many come typically, and we can call the parochial schools and ask them how many 8th graders or 5th graders they have. We don't see the same migration in grade 6, but as we do in 9, but we see a migration, and so we have to keep that in mind. And you have some middle school folks. I'll talk to you about the schedule if you have questions, but what is fair to say is there is a lot of transition between where our kids are assigned and where their neighborhood schools are and where they end up. And so that's the balance that we have also at the middle school level. And then finally, our high school staffing. We're using a formula this year, and we've met multiple times with our building principals to work on a staffing formula. The staffing formula gives the buildings some more autonomy in how they choose and what classes that they will continue to offer based on enrollment and student interest. Student interest and enrollment is always the factor in high school course offerings, but what we have done is we've used a mathematical formula. It's a little complicated, but it makes sense. You take their enrollment and you multiply it by the average number of classes that kids take. So our history tells us that students take about 7.54 classes per each student. And the reason you have to factor that in is because teachers can only teach 6. So if you didn't do that and you use the exact number, you would be understaffed dramatically if you can manage that. So if students take more classes than a teacher can teach, right, then you have to add to the factor. So then the formula uses students times the number of classes on average they take, divided by the student to teacher ratio you're trying to accomplish, times 6. And 6 is the number of classes that teachers take. It's a formula, it's math. We've tinkered with it along the way, and it gives then a section number. So a section is one class for one semester. Teachers teach 12 sections, and then the principals get, in theory, hundreds, almost 1,000 sections of which they will determine based on what they need. They have a pretty good idea. My guess would be they know how many seventh grade or how many algebra classes they need next year based on the number of classes they have. So that would be the overview. We will bring forward a final staffing report in March for the board's consideration and approval, but today was just kind of an update on what we have. So I'll pause there and see if questions. Yeah.
Why do we use a Friday instead of like a Wednesday or Thursday? I would think Friday that you would have a higher absenteeism with people blowing off for a weekend or kids saying, damn, I'm tired, am I going to school today? I'm just curious.
The state tells us what days we use. So their decision on the third Friday and in September and the second Friday in January are the official count dates for the district.
So I'm just, wish I'd have brought my other folder because I would have a copy of the TPR policy. So I wonder, you know, when the superintendent said TPR was just a new term for the same thing that you used before, you know?
I think we've been, it's new to me. The TPR, like the acronym is new to me, so I just explained it.
Okay.
I believe the district has been using TPR for, I don't know how long, but for a while.
Yeah. So it just makes me think about our current policy and when this was created, probably in 1948. That was sarcasm.
I was like, what is going on?
I bet it was the 70s. Do you have that up there by chance?
The original one was 1966.
So,
We're that far off.
1966, so I do believe, I think, well, we all believe that the lowest possible TPR is the best. But we also know then, on the other side, that means staffing, right? So budgets and all that play into all this. So I'm wondering what the original intent was, because, you know, you can read words and say, well, does the board policy say you shall staff at 1 to 25? You know what I mean? And we haven't done that, but I'm wondering if we shouldn't review this policy and start
Would
to.
you like me to read what it says in the board
Yeah,
policy?
would you please?
The board shall attempt to keep elementary student-teacher ratios within reasonable numbers as determined by research findings and the availability of sufficient resources. The following class sizes are established. So it's shall attempt to for elementary. And the board shall attempt to keep the middle school teacher ratios the same as those established and the same for high school. It's a shall attempt.
Is that Neola? Is that new?
That's our current board policy. It's
What was-
it's not an updated Neola
Yeah.
policy, and if we updated to Neola, they would take our wording for that.
Okay. All right, just give me something to think about. Thank you.
I would say that my understanding, and again, I would lean on our directors, was that that's the maximum number of students that we would, I don't know, not allow, but schedule. So if it was greater than 25 or 30 or 32, we would add staff. That would be my guess is the original intent.
That's how we've done it.
But, you know, again, I would say that 25, 24 is probably too many kindergartners in one classroom. Some of it depends. Some secondary classrooms, you know, if I'm in in example might be choir. I might have 45 kids in choir, and that might be perfectly acceptable. 45 in chemistry is probably not safe, right? So there's some balances with 32 might not be okay. So our building principals do a really good job in trying to balance that, and our goal again is limited resources and trying to prioritize where we put our resources so that our students and staff can have the best possible outcomes. And we know that class size matters. It's not the only thing, but it does make a difference. And I think we see the relationship specifically at our lower elementary and our transition years as the areas we're targeting.
Do we not also use this TPR policy that guides our staffing with other support staff like paras and, right? So we do, but do we have policy that guides us with that, or is that just?
I haven't seen a policy, but I've seen the document, which might be in the handbook.
Okay.
But we have a document that, and maybe Allison, you know the specifics there.
I just know that, yeah, we have certain formulas for when you have a certain number of students in a grade level, you're allocated that number of hours towards paraprofessionals. So that'll increase or decrease depending on those numbers.
So what I'm just thinking is overall picture of TPR in a classroom. So if you have a teacher, right, that drives TPR, but if we start adding other support staff, doesn't that also support our goal of having that lower TPR? I mean, does it have to be a teacher? You know what I mean? Can it be other?
Yeah, so it does, the first,
You know.
it is a teacher, and then if we have high TPRs, we then would add support staff. But TPR only defines teacher-pupil ratio, and the support staff helps support it when we are very high in our TPR. So let's say we have 29 fifth graders. We're saying, well, we're not going to add a teacher at this point, but we're going to add some additional support staff, which we might have at that time.
So does that pendulum swing the other way, and then say we got a classroom with only fifth grade class with 19, and then do we just say, well, we don't, where do you make the you can't draw a line, but where do you draw the line with, all right, now we don't need that support staff anymore. So how, what are we, when we say TPR, it can be, I can confuse it more. I mean, so for each teacher, they can handle 20? Can they handle 19 before we need support staff? And then if it goes back the other way, I'm kind of, okay, just,
The way that Scott used to communicate it was those are the hot spots he's watching.
Yeah.
with the principals. So, that's how I remember it.
Yeah, there's a document that has hotspots. What I would share with you, and again, I apologize, I'm a little bit new to the clear understanding, but the buildings get allocated support staff, and the building principals then decide based on student need and supports, not special education related, because students with IEPs have different, where the best use of the paraprofessionals are. If there's additional needs based on TPR classrooms that are high, then the HR, Scott, may decide to add a paraprofessional or some hours to help reduce the student impact or needs that they have from the high. But each building principal has to make a decision, and in some cases, the 19 in fifth grade there's not a problem and we've got everything handled. And there will be a time maybe where classroom instructors or a principal will say, boy, that's a class. We need some additional hands down there. And so that's where some of the resources go. But typically, in elementary schools, the resources are going to the early elementary, the early learning. the support they need for just recess and outside and in the classroom. And the more independent you are, the less need there are. Our middle school folks see very little as aid time, and our high school even less, just because of the resources that they have.
And I believe Scott could confirm the formula, but it's 2.25 minutes per student that they allocate the paraprofessional time towards. So it would be based on your student numbers as to how many hours a day and number of paras that you have.
Okay, if there are no further questions, we can move on, but I want to suggest that maybe we could look into further the policy on TPR to make sure that the wording as written is really how we are operating in our district, to make sure that they align, because it sounds like perhaps the language might be a little loose and not as reflective of specifying this is our limit with exceptions. So if that's something that, the PPC or the board is interested in us pursuing, I think we can look into that further. Just put it out there. Let me know what your thoughts are on that. We're good?
Yeah.
Okay, moving forward, Tina Johnson is here for benefits update. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon. It's great to see you all. So this is just going to give you a brief overview once again of where we're at, where we've been, and where we're going for our health benefits. As was outlined in the email that I had sent previously, we just aren't there yet with our numbers, and there's no sense in kicking numbers around if we don't know what they finally are. So you're going to find a little bit of new information in this presentation from the last PPC meeting that I presented at in November, and we can look forward to a couple weeks from now is when we're going to be meeting with Dean, our carrier Dean. We've already met with Mercy and have locked in with them as we have discussed previously, and then we'll probably have numbers. We're looking mid-March to come forward. And what Mark and I talked a little bit about today is that he and I and probably Dan and Scott will sit down and have a conversation. We'll go into close like we have in the past regarding negotiating contracts. And then if we need to have a board workshop, we can do that. And then we'll look to vote in April to get going, moving forward with our contracts and our health benefit package for our employees, with the hope that we can have open enrollment May 1st through May 15th. So that's kind of the timeline for you as we go forward, okay? So we'll start out, as always, it's really important to refresh our memories because we only hit on this maybe once or twice a year. So there's a little glossary of terms. Oh, I've got my downer. Thank you. It's been a little while. All right. So here we have our glossary of terms. I'm not going to read each of these to you, but it's just a frame of reference for you outlining HDHP, our acronyms, HSA, FAHP, what coinsurance is, what HMOs are, point of service plans are, and HRAs are concerned. You can take the time. I'm sure most of you have read through this already as you received this prior to this meeting. So we'll go next to our renewal recap, which you saw at the last meeting. Outlines what we did this year as far as our renewal and the results of the renewal. Dean initially came back this past year at 12.9 and finalized at 11.4. Mercy kept with their 9% cap. Our dental came back initially at 7% and then ended up with an increase of 4%. Everybody else was pretty much status quo as far as where we were in the previous year. So going into the 23-24 renewal, you'll notice we have everything coming due. I can give you just a slight overview on that. Mercy has come back with their 9% rate cap, which we anticipated, which is how we go about our budgeting process. Because if you recall, we always use the lowest cost plan, and then the employees make up the difference to the higher cost plan. So it helps us project a little bit easier, I'm sure, in the business department as well, to understand what 9% increase will look like across the board. But as I said, we have not yet received Dean's numbers, so it's hard to kind of take a look at what that might look like as far as impact on employees is concerned. Moving on to dental, good news, MetLife came back at 0. So there will be no increase. We will stay status quo with our dental insurance. And then we have a rate cap of 5%. We are running below what we would be projected to do, so we are, that can be good and bad, right? Like, I mean, are our employees usually using their dental plan? Maybe we need to do a little bit more educating on those 2 cleanings a year and making sure that people are utilizing the plan. But in addition to that, at least it's not maxing out to the other side where we have to have major increases to dental care. Beyond that, we have vision, group life AD&D, voluntary life, short-term and long-term disability, accidental critical illness, family advantage health plan, and FSA and COBRA. All of those are yet to come back. I will tell you that our group life and AD&D are coming back probably close to status quo for next year. However, our district life insurance, we might see a bit of an uptick. We've lost some treasured lives this past year as far as retired teachers are concerned. So that's something that impacts our life insurance plan going forward. Questions on that? Looking at, oh, I don't know how I skipped. Let's go back. Oh, I'm using the wrong way. Here we go, the Family Advantage Health Plan. So this has been updated as of 1/1 of 2023. You'll recall we had a conversation about this back in November, and we were predicting numbers that were a little less than where we are right now. I will tell you that we have 37 enrolled employees with 133 actual people on the plan that are no longer on our plan that were previously. So that's the good news on that side. In addition to that, you will notice that 83.3% of the employees on the FAHP are trending lower than estimated. So we're looking at a savings or a reallocation of funds elsewhere for the year of $236,810. So remember, this is kind of a 3-year long-range plan for the Family Advantage Health Plan. We continue to educate our employees, and Cottingham and Butler will be working next month to do yet another webinar for our employees, and we are looking for testimonials from those employees who are currently on the FAHP to talk about their experience with the plan. Any questions with the FAHP?
Have you seen, well, I guess you can't because there's an open enrollment. So are you are you anticipating that there's going to be, or have you heard talk that there are some people that are interested in coming aboard now?
Yes, so I'm receiving email now as we continue to have these conversations about health insurance, coming into the email and asking questions, and we're resending the webinar recording that we did back earlier in the school year to try to re-educate and get people back on board. But as we get through negotiations and those numbers start to come out, then I think we're going to probably see more people moving. We'll just have to wait and see what everybody's renewals are. I think you bring up a great point in that we had that renewal in January for most businesses. Most businesses run on a January 1st to December 31st schedule. We're unique in that we are July 1 to June 30th. And so now they've seen their spousal plan, and we'll see what we come back at and see where things fall with that. Okay, I will tell you that we were met with about 12 additional members moving off of the plan January 1st. Okay, questions? All right. Moving on to our final slide is really about other considerations. And really this is the behind the scenes work that is happening. And I think, again, as I said, we'll enhance education for the FAHP, kind of really getting people an understanding. Some of you, maybe all of you, have received concern and questions in regard to a cash in lieu of benefits for those employees who have chosen to not be on the district plan their entire time here at the School District of Janesville, and hearing rumblings of the FAHP and being able to be paid a premium every month and go off the plan. The plan as we approved it a year ago was that the employee has to be on our plan for 9 months. We cater to the new employees, 9 months before they can enroll in the FAHP. And the reason behind that goes along with all the numbers, and so they're already off the plan. They don't contribute to the max amount out. So it doesn't behoove us to do that. However, it's a great concern for our employees, and I feel that in my role, it is my job to make sure that you know that it's shared with you, and as we move forward and bring ideas and thoughts to the table and how to remedy those equity issues, you might call them, it's important that you're aware of them and that we bring solutions to the table to kind of help that understanding. We are also working on just a couple of different things that I'm not going to go into detail because they're not going to go into place likely this next year, but conditional management programs. So how do we help employees understand chronic conditions and what they can be doing for chronic conditions? Direct primary care opportunities. So instead of being referred out, that's where the money is made. They go directly to somebody in-house. Also wellness and compliance management. I think this piece really hits home for me. I think there are many programs out there that are preventive care, and we really have to do a good job of ensuring that our employees are getting their preventive care screenings taken care of so that they don't induce higher bills. I think if you're following it and you're keeping track of your testing and all of those pieces, you're going to be in a better situation. So those are pieces that on my end, I know I'm going to be really working to educate our employees to make sure they follow their preventive care practices. So again, if there are no further questions, the timeline, a couple weeks we're meeting with Dean. We'll be getting more and more information in from Lincoln Financial, who are our carrier for life insurance policy. MetLife, like I said, is our voluntary. All of our voluntary benefits are really employee paid. There's nothing that the district has to pay on those, but we want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to ensure that they get the lowest cost plan that they can get. So it's going to be that life insurance policy, Dean and Mercy, and how that all comes out. But we want to make sure that compensation piece is really unified with staffing and how we put all of those pieces together when we bring a recommendation to the board. Okay? Any questions you have? Kevin?
First of all, it's great to see you in person.
Yes?
I know I've asked this before and we've been through this, but about how many people are we talking about that don't enroll, that weren't able to take advantage of this?
Family Advantage
Yeah.
Health Plan. So it isn't a matter of not being able to take advantage. We have currently 900 plus employees who are on the plan. We have roughly 1,500 employees. Not all of those, I would say probably roughly 340, are not eligible. Of our 1,500 employees are not eligible for the plan. So you're talking roughly 200 employees who are eligible for our plan and not on our plan.
Well,
That number it continues to go down as we have more opportunities for them to take a different plan, like the FAHP, or they just make different choices. Or as we hire younger staff coming in, they're 23 years old and they're staying on their parents' plans. So our numbers go down, our enrollment numbers.
maybe I didn't ask the right question. How many employees can't take the advantage of the Advantage plan because they're not enrolled in any of our plans?
It would be roughly 200.
Oh, my goodness. So that's, geez, if we were to address 200 people to let, okay.
Well, we have nearly 50 couples, married couples in our district as is. So they wouldn't be able to take advantage of that plan. In addition to that, there are roughly 150 that are opting already to take their spouse's plan.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Very good. Thank you.
Well, I do have a question.
Sure.
I think I know the answer. I think I have to create an agenda request and give it to Kathy. But what I'm thinking about is, in 2025 is our next window for employees to get 3 years of health care, correct?
That is correct.
And what I'm hearing from some senior employees, that if that window would go to like 26 or 27, they would stay longer. So I think what I might do is draft a agenda request, trying to find out the best way to maybe ask Cunningham and Butler what the fiscal impact would be to extend that for a year at a time.
Sure.
You
I
know?
also think, and Dan, I think is here, I would say key benefits would be more the route to go, because if you're thinking about what is OPEB, Cottingham and Butler can tell you, what projections are for health insurance, but not necessarily the retirement impact. So if you remember, every year or every other year, we go through an audit with key benefits, and it takes all of our employees and all of their bank time times 147, and they are able to kind of give us a projection of cost and what that impact looks like. So that would be, I think, our first route step to go, and I believe this is a year that we are up for audit. We were not last year, but we asked them to help us out with that 147. So this year would be a time to do that. So the sooner you get that in, then the quicker we would be able to get those numbers going. Otherwise, it would have to wait, or we'd have to pay extra to have that study done.
And we still use the $147?
That is correct.
And that hasn't changed since day one, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Have a great night.
All right, thank you so much. We are now moving on to the presentation on Wonders Reading Curriculum by Dr. DeGraff. Thank you.
Good afternoon or good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you tonight a little bit about the new elementary ELA resource adoption. In 2022-23 school year, the School District of Janesville adopted a new K-5 ELA reading curriculum aligned to our Wisconsin Model Academic Standards. The last elementary resource adoption was in 2012. The adoption of the new ELA resource is also aligned to our district goal and supports increasing the number of students that are reading at an above grade level. So the outcomes, as I share with you tonight, the presentation on the adoption of the new ELA curriculum, is a little bit about why did we select Wonders? How did we go about adopting the resource? What was the adoption process we used as a district? And then what is that evidence of implementation and student growth? So why did we select Wonders? As we've talked, I've shared at previous board meetings as well that the Learning and Innovation Department is really looking at getting on a consistent resource adoption cycle. So again, it's been over 10 years since we adopted an elementary resource. And so working with Dan and the business department on how can we ensure that we have a consistent resource adoption cycle so that our teachers and our students have high quality resources that are aligned to those standards. That also is similar to what our other partner districts are doing and the amount of resources and funding they're allocating to resource adoption cycles to ensure teachers and students have the resources they need to provide high quality instruction for our students. So now we are looking at staying on a 6 to 7 year resource adoption cycle. The last resource was adopted just before Wisconsin State Model Academic Standards changed, and so we had a resource that wasn't directly aligned to what our students were assessed on. So, we had to do more supplementing. And when you don't have consistent tools in teachers' hands, we don't always know exactly what the resources are that are used as consistently. So really, it was really important to look at a resource that was better aligned to our state standards. And also, as you hear more frequently now, a lot of the research that's coming out around the science of reading. And Our previous resource did not have a lot of strong tools and supports in it for the reading foundational skills with phonics and phonemic awareness. So we really knew that we needed to find a resource that also had stronger foundational skills. So that is what led us to selecting Wonders. So how did we go about that process? It's always important in the process that we have our teachers as stakeholders as part of the process. The first step in our process before even adopting the resource was to provide some professional development on what are some of the shifts in reading instruction that the research is telling us and that we know students need in order to have a better foundation to be reading by third grade. So we spent a year, all of our K-5 teachers did a book study on instructional practices in reading, as well as they did the book study, they attended professional development, and then they applied those practices in their classroom and met again to talk about those practices. So that really helped build the foundation of what are those key strategies and tools we need in a resource to help us teach reading. So it really helped our teachers be better critical consumers as they looked at the resources to select to adopt in our district. Then we have a research-based resource adoption process that regardless of if I'm elementary ELA or high school math or middle school social studies, we have a district process that aligns with our promises and also has quality indicators. And so we use that process to evaluate resources that meet those indicators and then narrow those resources down to typically 2. So after looking at a series of resources with a district team, as well as principals, some teachers, and we also try to include teachers from EL, special education, and talented and gifted, and students with disabilities, so that we know that we have representation from all different aspects of our students in our district. Then we have teachers pilot 2 resources that we select. So for 12 weeks, we had the teachers pilot 1 resource, and then for 12 weeks, the second resource, and we had representation of teachers in all 12 elementary buildings, so all buildings had an opportunity to provide feedback. Once the teachers piloted the resource, the 2 resources, we came together with all of the teachers from the 12 buildings, and again, they shared their feedback on what worked really well with the 2 resources and what were the challenges. And then again, we went through a quality rating to help us determine what is the resource the teachers and the district team together recommend to adopt. And once we had determined that it was Wonders, we built a communication together to go out to, that the pilot teachers took back to their building and communicated to all of the teachers the process that we followed and the why and the how we determined Wonders. So then how do we ensure that we have evidence of high quality implementation? We know that we are investing financially in these high quality resources. We know that it's important for all of our students to have access to high quality instructional materials and teachers to have the tools they need in the classroom. And so one of the ways that we monitor the effective implementation is we do learning walks. And so myself, I was out at a building today, a couple last week. Myself and some of the members of the Learning and Innovation team, along with the principal, the instructional coach, we go into different classrooms. We observe in the classrooms, but we also ask teachers for feedback, like what is really working well, what are your challenges with the resource, because I want to know, do I hear themes at the district level, like they need more support in this, or we don't have, we might need to supplement something in this area. So the teachers provide really great feedback. And it's always wonderful to see them doing an amazing job of implementing the resource. So we do learning walks in the fall, and we're on our 2nd round this winter. Also within a new resource, we have assessments that the expectation is that every teacher is using those at the end of each unit. So we're not just monitoring the beginning, middle, and end of the year. How are our students progressing towards learning the standards? Every unit, they have an opportunity to see how are our students doing and getting closer to those grade level standards. We provided an additional resource to support phonemic awareness and use that as an assessment tool to provide evidence of growth in the foundational skills, we also use our STAR early literacy, our STAR Lexile measures, and then our forward data to indicate is the resource we've adopted, the training that we've provided, is that helping support effectively build student growth and achievement. So just as I've been out on the learning walks, so what do those tools and resources look like that our teachers have that we've invested our ESSER dollars in as well to adopt this high quality resource? So some of the things that you see at the top are every teacher has leveled colored bins with sets of books in them in lesson plans. So I know whether I'm at Harrison or I'm at Jackson in second grade, I have the same books and the same lesson plans that provide instruction in those foundational skills. And I don't have to worry as a teacher about creating that lesson plan or finding those books, but all kids are getting a quality experience. They also include those decodable readers, magnetic letters, individual book bins for students, books for small groups, as you see the teacher using up there. All of the resource has a digital tool, so all the books can be displayed on the smart panels. We also have magnetic letters to be used on the smart panels for building words as well. Again, the tools that are provided, all teachers have cards that they can display in their classroom regardless of what your school you're at, that shows whether you're using this blend or digraph or vowel combination. They all have cards to display for their students. They all have vocabulary cards, big books. There's also programs on the computer to practice word building skills and comprehension skills and fluency. And they have an assessment that all students take that mirrors our forward exam. So they get practice taking assessments similar to the forward. The little boy in the corner there, he was so excited because of all of our decodable books have reproducible copies so that they can highlight the vowel patterns. So he wanted to read to me and show me all the patterns he had found in his book. The student up in the corner is new to our district and is not non-English speaking at this time. And so he has his iPad, he takes a picture of the book and it translates it into Spanish. And so all of our kids, regardless of a challenge that they may have, we have tools to help them have support and access to these resources. So when we think about the professional development we've provided, the resources we've adopted, and the data that we're using to help provide our teachers with data and evidence to say what do we need to reteach, what are we doing well, all continue to help support student growth and achievement. So how did we do as an elementary or a 3-5 on our forward ELA exam? So when you look at the 10 largest districts, that's where Janesville falls. And then if you look at also districts, not kind of taking out Madison and Milwaukee as well, but 10 districts that have common enrollment and demographics. We continue to still be at the top in the state for that. So I think this again is a piece of data that tells us that we're continuing to trend in the right direction in some of the adjustments and changes we're making with our resources as well. I've also included for you tonight a district K-5 literacy plan. So that's a 5-year plan. It includes the last year or two previously of what we've been doing to, as we know, our district goal of increasing student achievement in reading and reading on grade level. What have we done in the last year or two, and what are we doing in the next 3 years moving forward? So this district literacy plan also provides at the end what are our key performance indicators. So at the end of 5 years, where do we expect us to be as a district to continue to increase our students' reading at and above grade level. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide an overview of our new elementary ELA resource. And if you have any questions at this time, I would be happy to answer them.
much of discrepancy do we have from our top elementary school, and I don't wanna know what school it is, to the lowest in terms of rating?
Well, so that's a good question, and I can speak to that in just a minute. When you look on the state report card, it's a little bit difficult to look at it just in that way because the state report card is weighted by, if the higher poverty you have in the school, the more measure they have on growth. The lower your poverty, the more weight you have on achievement on your report card. So, it's how each school is measured a little bit differently. But we have anywhere between 15 and 20% difference with, where we're at. It may vary by grade level, by school. But again, you have schools that have 95% poverty and you have schools that have 30% poverty. So there are differences in demographics within our own district that impact that as well.
So then, given that we know that, do we sink more resources into those schools because of the poverty or where they're at in terms of the needs?
Yes, so, and the schools with the higher poverty receive Title I resources. So resources can be, support financially as well, but it also, through those resources that they're allocated, they hire additional staff to teach Title I reading and sometimes Title I math as well. So they do have additional staffing that is in place to help close those gaps for students. And then at a future PPC meeting, I'll talk about the reading core that we're also doing that is bringing some resources to help close the gap for some of our schools with higher poverty as well.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
And we also have two schools, I forget those two schools that qualify for that program that,
AGR,
yes.
yes. So
And that also provides extra staffing for those, it's
correct. K3, they have lower TPR.
Wilson
Um,
and
Wilson and Jackson.
Wilson and Jackson. Okay, thank you. So that's another thing too.
Yes.
And that's like outside funding that those schools were able to qualify, but unfortunately that program ended and so other schools weren't able to participate, correct?
Well, AGR, you have to have a certain poverty level to qualify for. So those are the only two schools that qualify at this point.
And I just wanted to say, Dr. DeGraff and I have a very shared passion for the literacy initiatives, and so we've had a lot of conversations at different times, and it's very gratifying for me to see all of these things, and I'm incredibly appreciative of all the work that's been done in the district by you and all of the other people. It just really goes to show it's such a complicated process and takes years to switch over, but I am so grateful for you and everyone else for recognizing this is not working and we need to move forward, and it's a slow and steady process, but to see that we are, our forward exams last year, we're ranking higher than so many other schools, and obviously 41%, we still have a ways to go, but we're gonna get there because we are, and also I'm super invested. I do a lot of research on my own. It's a lot of the same research. We're using strategies that are like, these are the strategies that everyone is saying have to be done for, best practices. And I get to then communicate with people in our community to say, hey, guess what? We're doing all of these things. We have them in place. To see Haggerty listed, that's like the program. And I mean, I've looked up Wonders, and it is recognized as aligned with all the best practices. The former program former curriculum was not. And so we saw that and we moved, and I'm so grateful. Another cool piece was one of my children was in a pilot classroom last year. So, I get to experience it as a board member from seeing this, but then also my own passion and then my own child being able to be a part of the process. So, I just think it's great, and I'm really proud of all the work that everyone has been putting into this. And I can see, I've mentioned it before, I have a second grader, and I can see the difference in her reading skill as a young person because of the explicit phonemic awareness and that she has been taught, because our teachers are now getting that when we just didn't have those resources prior. So, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the board's support in
Yeah.
this adoption as well.
This February, when did this go in? Is it started this week?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, moving forward, update on middle school staffing, Mr. Medenwalt, thank you. Staffing's, I'm sorry, middle school scheduling.
Yeah, let's just say it's good evening now, so that's why
I
that happened, right? It's evening. We
apologize,
got past
thank you, good
5:30, so.
evening.
Yeah, I'm just gonna give you a quick update on some of the things that the middle school principals and I have been working on. It really started when I was employed 18 months ago. There was a bunch of conversations about changing the middle school schedule, and we had several conversations about what we wanted to do. What we did most recently is started to look at, well, what kind of experience do we want our middle school students to have, and started answering those questions. And so I'll go through some of that, and then I'll go through a little bit of what the schedule in front of you looks like. But one of the things we said is we wanted it to be equitable for students, that we wanted them to have opportunities to learn no matter what their situation was. So we knew we needed a little more time in our classes to do that, because currently in our 8-period day and 44 minutes, there wasn't really a lot of time to practice. And so students who had that opportunity to practice at home and students who didn't have that opportunity wasn't equitable. The other thing that we wanted to do in equity is to give students a flex time. Some students have the opportunity to stay late and do those sorts of things and stay with teachers. Some don't have that opportunity. So we want to be able to build that into our day so it was equitable for all students. Another thing we wanted to do is actually be able to teach the work we've been doing in finding new curriculum the way it was intended. And most curriculum being written now at the middle school level is written for about an hour in order to have that. Some is actually written longer than that, and so we usually have to eliminate that as a possibility for us to teach. But that was one of the things we wanted to do. We wanted to see if we could reduce the transitions during the day. Those folks will tell you that a transition in middle school is usually just an opportunity for something to go wrong, is what it is. So if we could reduce those, that helps out. And kids don't want to have bad days at school. So if we can make it so there's less of an opportunity for that, good for us. I talked a little bit about the flex opportunity as an equity standpoint. The other thing that we thought it was important for is one of the things we're real sure about is that no two students learn at the same speed and the same depth, right? So giving us an opportunity to have students be able to have access to their teachers each day to be able to answer questions, or the opposite, for teachers to say, hey, Chris has got to come in because he's not getting this. So I want to work with him a little more, was important. In the big picture of things and looking at the schedule, we knew we needed to be staff neutral or awfully close to it. Mr. Holtzman wasn't able to come in and say, hey, you know what, when they hired me as superintendent, our budget went up 25%. Because that didn't happen, so we had to make sure we could do that. We did have some schedules we really, really liked that answered some of those questions that I just went through extraordinarily well. They were not staffing neutral. They would have cost a lot of money. And so we knew that we couldn't afford to do that. We also wanted to make sure it wasn't in a staffing sense that went the opposite way, that we were reducing staff, because we know that the most influential person in the classroom is the teacher. So what this schedule does, it allows us to preserve our electives. We had to do some shifting and changing, but allows us to preserve them. It also allows us to do some things maybe a little bit different with a few of them that after experience on our current schedule, we believe it'll be better. One of the major changes for us is it will allow us to teach currently we teach ELA and reading separately. It's two separate courses in our middle schools. And there is not an ELA curriculum that is intended to do that anywhere. So we are doing we are kind of just mishmashing that a little bit to separate that. This will allow us to teach it the way it's intended and give us a little more time in our day. It will help us, some of our teachers, be a little more focused in what they teach by teaching fewer classes in some cases and create some content expertise. And lastly, we believe the schedule really does help support. We put a lot of work into professional learning community as a district, and this really does support that work. It still allows us to build relationships, staff with students. It allows staff to build relationships with staff. It allows for collaborative time during the school day. And then, as I said, it allows us to have a flex period, which allows us to answer one of the questions that we think is really important to us is, what do we do when a student doesn't learn? And it gives us that opportunity. So the schedule that's in front of you, I'll go through quick, and then I'll answer questions. And if I can't answer them, I brought three experts in the back that are much closer to the problem than I am, so they're much closer to the solution. So the first part of the day is basically attendance. And it's attendance. It's time for kids maybe to eat some breakfast. If they didn't get breakfast, it's just that it's a nice, easy start to the day for just a few minutes instead of, hey, sit down, here we go, here's math, all right? Just a little bit of a flow into the day. Class periods of 56 minutes. Currently our class periods are 44 minutes. You can say, well, that's not that big a difference. That's 12 minutes a day. That's 60 minutes a week. That's an hour a week we gained of teaching and learning by doing this per class period. So you can see the 56-minute class periods, a 36-minute lunch, and the lunches rotate, and that's just so we can change over the lunchroom and make sure our staff there can be prepared for each lunch. The flex period, you'll see it, while it's not numbered, it's flex. It really would be 5.5 if that's what you like to be, about 40 minutes. We did that for two reasons. One is we think there needs to be enough time for kids at the end of the day like that we got to get them settled. All right, here's what we're going to do. Most research-based interventions, if we get to tier 2 or tier 3 level support, need to be for 30 minutes in order for them to count. So we want to make sure we have enough time for that. So that was part of the reason for us settling on where we thought that 40 minutes was, and then finishing up the last period of the day there. The color coding, honestly, was just for us to keep track of, hey, how would we fit in exploratory classes, and how would we fit in flex, how would we fit in lunch, and how would we fit in our core classes. So that's not other than flex and lunch and the period numbers, those we intend to remain the same. Whether or not the encores happen during the periods that are labeled in blue, that will depend on students and numbers and shared staff and that sort of thing. So that was just more for us to make sure the schedule worked out. So I'm happy to take any questions. Like I said, if I can't answer them, I'm positive that our principals will be able to help me out.
4 minutes between classes periods. I know they move a hell of a lot faster than I do, but how is that feasible to go from a class to your locker to another class in 4 minutes and possibly use the bathroom?
Yep, for the most part, unless you're going to tell me I'm wrong, that's
They need 4 minutes if they're going from like the PE to the other end of the building. You know how but when they just go into the next math to English, most things they've sung a Chromebook now. They don't even go back to their lockers.
Yeah,
So they don't really need to have 4 minutes, but you have to go to the other end of the building.
What did that change with the schedule? The passing
4 minutes
time?
is always there.
The 4 minutes that didn't
that's
change.
consistent.
Okay, I'm just curious. But yeah, I didn't think you don't have to go running back to the lockers these days.
And for the most part, because of the middle school scheduling and the middle school system, they're not even, other than when they're in exploratory, they're not going to another part of the building, right? Their next class is right in this door, right? And they just came out of this one. So, other questions?
Thank you. So we went from 8 periods to 6, right? And the class times are longer, so we can get more content and finish what we need to do. How do specials fit into here? Do they, are,
Everyone else, they currently have two specials, 44 minutes, now they have two specials of 56 minutes. So when you're an art teacher, you actually have a little more time for the kids to put the stuff away before the next group comes through. So, same with the instruments, they'll have time to put their stuff away, and not just toss it in the corner. So it gives them a little more time, so they're treated just like all others. We have to make all the schedules match up because we cover so frequently internally, so we can't have different lengths of periods.
okay. So specials, like you just said, have increased as well, the time for any,
Actively. And special splits also access kids during class.
are these, like currently, are these the normal lunch periods for these students?
Pretty much. I mean, within minutes, yeah.
Well, in minutes, but it seems like 1:03 in the afternoon is pretty late for a eighth grader for lunch.
Yeah, and I think right now they eat at 1:04.
What's that?
They eat at 1:04 now is when our eighth grade goes. I don't know.
Oh, they do
They're all
now?
the same.
Yeah,
Wow.
to
They're
switch
really
them
hungry
through.
by that time,
They must
Kevin.
have a snack. They must have a snack.
Yeah.
before.
We all allow them to eat and take a snack during the classes.
Okay.
They have-
Do
And
middle
the
school,
sixth grade who eats earlier, they take an afternoon snack.
okay. Do middle schoolers have recess?
It's built into the lunch period.
Okay.
But very little, Kevin. I mean, compared to elementary, middle school students have very little time to,
Yeah.
yeah.
If, in
Okay.
terms of attendance, if the student's not there between 8 and 8:07, they come in late because they had a 8 o'clock doctor's appointment, are they absent for the day then?
No. That will just get updated in IC of like here's where they
okay.
were, and that will go. That just gives us that time. Like I said, it's kind of that ease into the day. So one, it gives us plenty of time to take attendance. Because not every family's moving at the same speed right away in the morning. So it gives us just a little bit of time to get into that into the groove of things by about 10 after. Yeah, we'll take attendance there, but and we also have a large number of students who they eat breakfast at our place, so it gives them that opportunity.
I was concerned about the lunch ladies, that's why.
So are we.
Is it, and this is for beginning next year, right?
Correct.
For our incoming sixth graders, obviously, I don't think it's not that big of an impact. How does that impact the seventh and eighth graders? Are they gonna kinda, have you had conversations with them about we're no longer gonna have 8 periods, they're gonna be condensed down? Cause they're picking classes and things, right? So,
Yeah, so one of the things that we want to make sure in our schedule is that when we were selecting classes that we would be able to make this happen. And so through the course selection process, we'll be able to do that. I don't know if any of you have talked to students. I just know that they're middle school students. In my experience, working in middle schools for about 15 years, is most of them won't remember what the schedule was last year. I'm just being upfront. Right, and I don't know if you think that's going to be different, but they were like, "Oh, is this what we did last year?" And if we tell them, "Yeah, it is," they'll be like, "Oh."
You know, the big
Got it.
shift for them, just the big shift for them is really that they don't have a separate reading class. Their reading and literature class are in the same room. So it's just one less transition for them to go to an extra period. And I in favor of having less transitions for middle schoolers. And that first period where it says attendance, if you think about their first class after that, that's really the same room. They're not going to go to a class for 7 minutes and then shift. That first class is 7 minutes longer than the others. So whatever it was, 7 or 8 minutes. So they could have breakfast and have that easier, softer entrance into the school, kind of a check-in, take their temperature, make sure they're doing okay. You know.
so the secondary value of this too is it keeps them out of the halls and out of idle hands and.
More time in structured settings.
Okay,
So we took off some of the transition periods.
okay.
I have a fifth grader. he'll be with you next year, Mr. Schmelz. So this is really nice to see. So talk me through the flex. So is this taking place of like homeroom before?
Yes.
So we'll do a few things with Flex, and maybe a little bit different than we've done in the past, but it'll be daily. So there's a few things we'll be able to do. One is we'll be able to do our SEL curriculum, our second step curriculum during that time, whichever day of the week works out best for that. It will be flexible in that it will give all of our students and all of our teachers access. So if the sixth grade, if one particular team says, hey, today we're going to do some math student work for all our math students, and then the other students have these opportunities for extensions or other things, it will allow us to have extensions in our encore area. So maybe we're going to run a dodgeball tournament one day during that, and if kids aren't behind, they can sign up for dodgeball. So what it will be is it will be a flexible schedule every day, and we will work through. In fact, we were just meeting with a software representative that makes this happen in schools, of kids getting some choices, but teachers getting first choice. Like I said, Chris is coming with me. He's not playing dodgeball, right? He didn't get that opportunity. That will happen, and also give an opportunity to run assemblies without having separate schedules. It'll be an opportunity to have class meetings without having separate schedules. So it will allow us to do quite a few things, which is part of the reason we just named it Flex, because it'll allow some flexibility.
Nice, awesome. And then, okay, so I'm confused. We went from 8 to 6 subjects with the combination of ELA and reading. Am I missing something?
Yeah, so we did two combinations there. One, we did the ELA and reading combination, and two, right now, health is taught as a core. It's now going to be as a forced elective.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
so it'll go into the rotation that way, and it won't eliminate any of the rotations. What it did do for some of our encores is it moved them from being a year-long to being some semester-long ones, or being on rotations. But overall, we don't have to eliminate any of our encore choices. Did I state that right?
Thank you. Appreciate it. I appreciate the work that you've put in. This will be fun to see how it's like having a middle schooler
Absolutely.
again.
All right, thank you. Sorry.
I just want to take the opportunity, since all the middle school principals are here, that at the Optimist Club, we had students from each one of your schools. It was just outstanding. The staff and the parents and the students, they were fabulous, just wonderful. You picked some good ones, so appreciate that.
Michelle, did you have a comment?
Sorry, I have a sixth grader, this is really catching
Mhm.
So flex, where do they go for flex? Is that like your advisory teacher? Because almost have reading schedule now, somebody's got advisory, is that now flex?
So it may change daily, honestly, right? You may have a choice of Monday I'm going to go here because this is what I want to do. Tuesday I go here because this is what I want to do. Wednesday could be advisory, and that's where I go. Thursday could be something else. Friday could be something else. He may be chosen to go somewhere because he's got to do makeup work because, he was sick for 2 days, and so this is where we're going to do the makeup work. It really will be flexible. Will there be a home base? The home base will be advisory. Will that be every day that they show up there and go somewhere else? No, it will take us a little while, but we will train them. Like, here's your schedule. It got emailed to you. There's an app that lets you see it. Boom, where you got to go. And we were not the first, right? We're not inventing this, right? Middle school students do this all over the country every day.
Because it sounds really complicated.
It does sound complicated, and it will take some training, but I'm positive that the students in Janesville can do it if the students everywhere else
Yeah,
can do
I
it.
think we've already talked about a slow start to Flex.
Yeah.
Where, like, even like the month of September, there's a lot of things we have to do for middle school kids. And it's not like day one, we're going, here you go. Because they have to learn the system. We have to get some other things in place. We still have to have a structure of where students are going to have their parent-teacher conferences, so they have to be connected to a teacher. But now we'll be able to also have exploratory teachers attached to that as well. that the flex is a lot of summer work for us, but it's exciting. I mean, the intervention piece, to be able to create a system that is certainly connected with our PLC work, that we know that the math teacher can work with the kids who are struggling in math. That system does not exist right now as clean as it does here. This is really what that does.
I guess I wish the schedule would have addressed some of my theory, because that is late for eighth graders, and if high schools are back to back, why can't the lunches be pretty much back to back in middle school and not have our eighth graders eating except for one?
Yeah, so the hard part about scheduling with 3 different lunches, to do that is then your class periods and lunch periods have to match up. So we could do that with 2 lunch periods and 56-minute lunches pretty easy, right? But once you get into, well, we're gonna have a 36-minute lunch, right? It's just how the numbers gotta work, and the numbers don't, right? In order to put the next lunch at 40 minutes later, that means the previous class had to be done, and it's not done for another 16 minutes, if that makes sense. It's an interesting puzzle that, I don't disagree, it's late.
And not every kid has a snack.
Yep, absolutely. The trade-off is either they eat late or we start feeding them at 10:30,
No,
right?
the reality is, we already eat, and we have been eating at that time for 8th grade.
I understand,
So,
understand they're
they get adjusted, I just don't know, they just get adjusted. I always think the 6th graders, are they gonna be ready to eat in time? They are. And the 7th graders always have the best lunch. This just seems to be the right time for lunch.
I mean, you bring up some really good points, Michelle, though, about food and having access. I know how it works. There's a lot of opportunity at a Title I school, a free and reduced lunch where there is free breakfast and free lunch for all kids, regardless of need. And so they do have excess snacks available at different points of the day. So I'm wondering, what opportunities are there for extra food for those kids that may not be bringing a snack from home but truly are hungry? Because I know my husband tells me I get hangry. And so the ability to concentrate clearly can be interrupted, and then we're going against our our goal of educating students if they're angry and not being able to focus. So what supports are needed at the middle school so that you have more food available?
Well, I think what you're really kind of getting at is the relationships that we're forming with our kids. And that's the other thing that we were really protecting with this schedule. We gotta create the smallness within largeness and have them be able to connect with adults in their house or with their advisory. So there are kids exactly like you are describing, and I feel that even through our current structure, but this one will even make it stronger to be able to identify those kids. And to my knowledge, if a kid needs nutrition, we are able to get them. And that's not to say that everybody's getting the same thing, but I think we know them well enough that we're able to get them what they need.
I would say, just because of my connections to PTAs, if there ever are school-wide, hey, we just need more snack availabilities, reach out to those parent volunteers, because that's absolutely something that I think there would be that support. Kathy, thank you for your patience.
I just have a question about, some of these, lunch, for instance, if I look at, row 4, where we have the first lunch in 6th grade, and then I go over to 7th grade, so the 6th graders are starting at 11:03, 7th grade period 4 starts at 11:07. Do they use bells in
Yes.
middle school, and are we gonna have bells just ringing all the time, are they some way to, I was just wondering about how hard that is to coordinate.
Well, maybe I'll let you end. That part isn't really a change from your current schedule, is it not? I mean, that during lunchtime, it's a little annoying.
Okay,
I-
okay.
True.
More bells. All right, okay, all right. Just-
Bells and whistles going off all the time.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you so
Thank you.
much. We appreciate it. Okay, that concludes what we had on our agenda. I don't know if there's any announcements or updates. I will say that the PPC planning meeting will be held with myself and Mr. Holzman and the administrative team, 9:30 next week. So if there's anything that, you feel we need to be addressing, committee members, board, please reach out so you know that that's taking place. And Ms. Jensen, do you have any other points to share? Okay. And then we have our next PPC meeting scheduled for March. I could look, right? March 6th. So same time, same place. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to our middle school principals for joining us. We appreciate it. Okay. We're adjourned. I don't need to do this again, do I? We're adjourned. Thank you.